Some motorcycle helmets are genuinely great. Others mostly became famous because they look great, and that matters because a lot of riders spend 500 euros, 700 euros, sometimes even more, only to realize the helmet becomes exhausting to live with. Too loud, too compromised, too style-focused. So today we're calling out 3 motorcycle helmets we think are honestly overrated, and 3 that deserve way more respect than they get, including one helmet that dominates Instagram and YouTube Shorts, but seriously disappointed us once we actually tested it on the road. Let's start with probably the most controversial one. The Icon Airflite might be one of the most recognizable motorcycle helmets of the last few years. And visually, we get it. The huge visor, the aggressive shape, the cyberpunk look, it stands out immediately, but once you move away from photos and actually ride in it, the experience becomes a lot less impressive. The biggest issue? Noise. And not just slightly noisy. In our own road testing, the Airflite reached around 110 decibels at highway speed, which is seriously loud for longer rides. And riders mention the same complaints constantly: wind noise, visor sealing issues, fogging, and fatigue on longer rides. And after a while, that starts getting annoying fast, because a helmet can look amazing for 10 seconds at a gas station, but if it becomes exhausting after 45 minutes on the highway, your priorities change very quickly. Now, to be fair, this does not make the Airflite a bad helmet. For urban riding, shorter rides, or riders who care heavily about style and presence, it absolutely makes sense. But the hype around it often feels bigger than the real-world riding experience. And that's why, for us, the Airflite lands in the overrated category. Now, compared to the Airflite, the next helmet is almost the complete opposite. Instead of futuristic aggression, this one sells nostalgia. The Shoei Glamster 06 is a helmet people want to love. And visually, honestly, understandable. If you own a cafe racer, retro bike, or custom build, the Glamster just fits the aesthetic perfectly. And of course, the Shoei badge carries weight too. But here's the problem. A lot of riders buy the Glamster expecting modern premium Shoei refinement everywhere. But what they're actually getting is a retro-focused helmet with what we found were very real compromises, especially for the money. Compared to modern sport touring helmets in a similar price range, you're giving up convenience features, noise performance, practicality, and visor versatility. And some riders only realize that after living with it. This is one of those helmets where the emotional purchase is often stronger than the rational one. And honestly, that's completely fine if you know that going in. Because if your number one priority is style, heritage, and retro aesthetics, the Glamster absolutely delivers. But if you mainly care about comfort, quietness, and long-distance practicality, there are helmets at similar prices that simply work better as daily helmets. The Roof Boxer 2 Carbon is one of those helmets people instantly recognize. You see it once, and you remember it. The flip-over chin design looks incredibly cool, especially on naked bikes, urban builds, and aggressive street setups. But this is also a perfect example of a helmet where uniqueness creates compromise. Because once you start looking at it as a serious, everyday riding helmet, the weaknesses become harder to ignore. The field of view feels narrower than many modern alternatives. The mechanism itself is also less intuitive than conventional modular systems. And highway noise? Definitely noticeable. Now, to be fair, people usually do not buy a Roof Boxer because they want the quietest, most rational touring helmet on the market. They buy it because it has character. And honestly, that matters too. Motorcycling is emotional, but sometimes online hype makes a helmet look almost universally amazing, when in reality it's much more niche than people admit. For the right rider? Fantastic. For the average rider? Probably far more compromised than social media makes it seem. Now those helmets all have one thing in common. They're popular. Very popular. But popularity and value are not always the same thing. Because some helmets quietly do almost everything well, without getting anywhere near the same attention. Starting with one brand that riders still underestimate way too often. A few years ago, many riders saw LS2 as purely a budget brand. And honestly, that reputation still follows them, which is exactly why the LS2 Dragon surprised us. Because this helmet feels far more serious than many riders expect. The first thing riders notice is the weight. It feels light, agile, less tiring during longer rides, and owner feedback around the Dragon has actually been very positive, especially regarding value for money, included extras, comfort, and aerodynamic stability. And this is important. The Dragon doesn't feel like a cheap compromise helmet. It genuinely feels like a very high-end helmet. Will it suddenly replace premium flagship helmets from Mirai for everyone? No, but that's not the point. The point is that many riders completely overlook this helmet, while spending significantly more for helmets that offer significantly less. This is probably the helmet on this list that deserves way more respect from sport riders, because the Scorpion EXO-R1 EVO 2 Air quietly offers an absurd amount of helmet for the money, especially when you compare it against much more expensive sport helmets. You get aggressive sporty design, lightweight shell, strong feature package, and a very solid overall comfort. And yet many riders still skip over it because the logo says Scorpion instead of Shoei or AGV. That branding bias is real. And honestly, this is where riders sometimes pay hundreds extra for prestige more than performance. Now, of course, premium brands still absolutely have advantages in certain areas, but the gap is often smaller than riders expect, especially for street riding. And that's where the EXO-R1 EVO 2 Air becomes extremely interesting. Because this is not a beginner-level compromise helmet pretending to be sporty, it actually delivers a genuinely premium-feeling riding experience. Now, the final underrated helmet might be the least surprising pick for hardcore helmet enthusiasts, but for mainstream buyers, it still doesn't get the recognition it deserves. When riders talk about premium sport helmets, the conversation usually goes straight to AGV, Arai, or sometimes Alpine stars. And somewhere in that conversation, the HJC RPHA 12 gets weirdly overlooked, which honestly makes very little sense, because this is a seriously capable sport helmet. The RPHA 12 is lightweight, aggressive, stable at speed, and still practical enough for real-world street riding. That last part matters, because some race-focused helmets become tiring surprisingly quickly outside the track environment. The RPHA 12 balances performance and usability much better than many people expect. Riders also consistently praise ventilation, comfort, included smoke visor, and overall value. And honestly, this is one of the clearest examples of a helmet that suffers from perception, because many riders still subconsciously place HJC below certain premium brands, even when the actual product performance is extremely competitive. And once people finally try the RPHA 12, a lot of them end up far more impressed than expected. So what's the conclusion here? A helmet being popular does not automatically mean it's the best choice. Sometimes hype comes from aesthetics, branding, online trends, social media visibility, and sometimes genuinely excellent helmets simply get ignored because they don't have the same prestige. Now, obviously, this is also where riders will disagree. And honestly, that's okay, because helmet choice is personal. Different bikes, different riding styles, different priorities. But we're very curious. Which motorcycle helmet do you think is the most overrated right now? And which helmet deserves way more respect than it gets? Let us know in the comments. And if you want to compare these helmets yourself, check prices, or read more rider reviews, you can find them on Champion Helmets. Buy smart, ride safe, and we'll see you in the next one.